My parents skipped my graduation for my sister's party. AITA for cutting ties due to their neglect. Hello Reddit, I've been struggling for years with a family dilemma and I need your opinion. Hold on tight, because this is a lengthy and intricate tale. My upbringing was typical of a suburban American family, but with a twist. The golden child has always been my older sister. It was evident from the time of my birth that my parents had a favorite, and it wasn't me. They wanted my sister to be attractive, athletic, and vivacious, and she was all three. She had the ability to enchant everyone, including neighbors and new classmates, giving them the sense that she was the epitome of perfection. Then there was me. I wouldn't describe myself as typical, but in my parents' eyes, I might as well have been invisible in comparison to my sister. I was constantly failing. They prevented me from being who I am because they wanted me to appear and behave like her. I wasn't even allowed the luxury of attempting to find myself at a time when most children are having a hard time. Allow me to illustrate this with a few instances from our everyday life. My sister was always the main character in school plays when we were kids. Our parents would be in the spotlight, beaming with delight, and she would be given the lead part. I recall having a minor speaking role in the school play one year. I was ecstatic because I believed that this would be my opportunity to finally make them proud. However, my sister had a soccer match the night of the concert, so they were running late. They devoted the remainder of the evening to praising my sister's performance in her game, completely missing my contribution. The family pictures came next. We would take a family photo each year to use on our Christmas cards. With our parents' hands on her shoulders, my sister would always be the center of attention. Almost as an afterthought, I would be off to the side. I requested if I might stand in the center for once when I was around 12 years old. It hurt more than words can describe when my mother laughed it off and said, "Oh honey, your sister is taller. It just looks better this way." As the abandoned kid who lived in their sister's shadow, all I wanted as a child was the approval and attention of my parents. My day used to be brightened by the smallest hint of positive feedback from them. I realize that's pathetic, but at the moment, it meant the world to me. It wasn't made any easier by my sister. I was bullied by her, and she was brilliant at it. She would never stop telling me that I would never be able to live up to her standards and that our parents would never love me as much as they loved her. My self-esteem was influenced for years to come by everyday suffering. I have a clear memory of one occasion. I had just won a local writing competition at the age of 14. I was ecstatic, thinking, at last, I've accomplished something significant. My sister interrupted me at dinner to announce that she had been selected as the cheerleading squad's captain. Suddenly, my accomplishment was forgotten. My parents talked about how this would look fantastic on her college applications for the remainder of the evening. My victory in the event was never brought up again. The preference became much more obvious as we got older. Our parents purchased a brand new vehicle for my sister when she obtained her driver's license. 2 years later, when it was my turn, I was informed that if I needed to go someplace, I could borrow the old family minivan. Every time I attempted to bring up the obvious difference in treatment, I was told I was being jealous or overly sensitive. When I graduated from high school, that was the tipping point. I was able to graduate as valedictorian in spite of all the difficulties. I couldn't wait to tell my parents about it because it was the proudest time of my early life. As I delivered my speech, I pictured them grinning with pride, finally recognizing me for who I truly was. However, they failed to appear. It seems like my sister's celebration with her friends at our summer cottage was more significant than their younger daughter's high school graduation. They offered me a number of justifications, claiming that graduating from high school wasn't a huge issue. It meant everything to me. I had worked so hard for this moment, which I believed would finally bring them joy. The seats I had set up for the audience were empty, so I recall standing at the stage and looking around in the hopes of seeing their faces. As I spoke at the ceremony, my voice quivering a little, I understood that anything I accomplished would never be sufficient for them. Something inside of me broke that day. I made a choice that would alter my life's trajectory. I chose the college that was the furthest distant from my house. As far away from Ohio as possible, I applied to West Coast schools. My parents were taken aback when I told them I had decided to attend college after dinner one evening. They had presumed that I would attend the same public school where my sister had gone. "But that's so far away," objected my mother. "How will you manage on your own?" It was the first time I can recall them being concerned about me, although even then, there was some skepticism about my skills. College was enlightening. I was able to be myself for the first time in my life. My favorite subject was English, which I studied despite my parents' disapproval. My studies had been pushed to be practical, as they called it, like law or business. However, I refused to back down. I discovered how to live my life as I desired, ignoring their judgment. I really started to take off in college. I found my own strengths without having to constantly compare myself to my sister. I discovered that I had a knack for journalism after joining the campus newspaper. For the first time, I felt recognized and valued for my own abilities when my professors gave me positive feedback on my work. I also met my future husband while I was a college student. Instead of viewing me as someone's sister or daughter, he viewed me for who I was. We first connected in a literary class for general education. I volunteered to help him with an essay he was having trouble with. We spent hours discussing our lives, aspirations, and anxieties in addition to the assignment. For the first time, I felt like I was being heard. My pals weren't truly friends. Usually, they merely approached me to learn more about my sister. However, I discovered in college the importance of true friendships, love, and all of their facets. It wasn't because of or in spite of my family that I met friends who liked me for who I was. We would encourage one another through the stress of term papers and examinations, go on road trips during breaks, and stay up late studying together. I didn't bother phoning my family once I graduated, as I was surrounded by my friends and my future husband. I was correct when I said that they would come up with another reason to skip it. They failed to show up, claiming that my father was unable to postpone a business trip. However, it didn't hurt as much this time. I was surrounded by members of my chosen family who genuinely cared about my progress. I moved in with my now husband, who had secured a position at a tech firm, after graduating and obtained a job in marketing. All I ever heard from my parents when they called at this time was the news about my sister. I never had the stamina to tell them about my life, and they never bothered to inquire about me. Unless they were making negative comparisons to my sister, it seemed as though I didn't exist. One call stands out in my memory. About 6 months had passed since graduation. For someone just out of college, my promotion to junior manager was rather significant. I was thrilled and hoped that my folks would be pleased. I was excited to tell my mother the news when she called. "Oh, that's nice, dear. Did you hear your sister is expecting? We're going to be grandparents," she replied after a brief silence. My sister's pregnancy took up the remainder of the call. No one ever brought up my promotion again. As the years went by, my career took off. I rose through the ranks of the company, receiving honors and promotions, but my family didn't seem to care. My accomplishments were greeted with disdain, or worse, silence, while my sister's merest accomplishments were hailed as national feasts. I made an effort to stay in touch with my relatives. Yes, I did. I would occasionally fly back for Thanksgiving, send birthday cards, and make phone calls on holidays. However, each visit was identical. My sister and her expanding family would take center stage, and I would be relegated to the background. My parents hardly acknowledged me as they lavished affection on her kids, my niece and nephew. I remember one Thanksgiving in particular. I had taken a leave of absence from an important project at work and flown home. I hoped that things would be different this time. Without the typical drama, perhaps we could enjoy a pleasant family meal. How foolish I was. We talked about my sister's recent home improvement and her kids' academic success the whole evening. My father interrupted me in the middle of telling me about my recent promotion to senior manager to inquire about my sister's Christmas plans. My current spouse and I became engaged a few years later. Later that year, we were to get married. Surprisingly, my family expressed interest in the marriage when I told them. I dared to dream for a second that things could be turning around. However, when they learned that my fiancé came from a typical middle-class family instead of a wealthy one, their curiosity soon gave way to disappointment. They wanted me to marry into a family with great social standing, just like my sister did. "You know your sister's husband is a surgeon, so there must be some good physicians or attorneys at your company." "But honey," my mother continued, her voice brimming with disappointment, "don't you think you could do better?" Their suggestion left me stunned. They were still unable to accept my decisions and see me for who I was after all these years. The final person to find out about my wedding was my sister, who never held back when voicing her dislike for both my fiancé and me. She always talked to me as if I were the dirt under her feet. However, I was insensitive to her reactions by that point because I had grown accustomed to it. She scoffed when I informed her about my fiancé's work and asked, "A marketing manager? I suppose that's nice. Not everyone can marry a doctor, after all." We proceeded with our wedding arrangements in spite of my family's response. With the assistance of my in-laws and friends, the wedding was organized. The parents I never had were my in-laws. I cried more than once because they loved me unconditionally and treated me like their own. They constantly promised me that they would support me because they were aware of my difficulties with my sister and parents. My future in-laws were kind, encouraging, and truly interested in my life, everything I could have ever hoped for in a parent. They celebrated by taking us out to dinner after I informed them of my promotion. They listened to my worries about the wedding and my family's response without passing judgment and provided consolation and guidance. One of the conversations I had with my future mother-in-law almost made me cry. I hesitated when we were discussing wedding invitations because they were from my family. She asked what was wrong after noticing my anxiety. She dropped the pen she was holding and took my hands in hers after I explained the circumstances. "Sweetheart," she declared, "family is more than blood. It's the people who love and support you, who celebrate your joys and comfort you in your sorrows. We may not have given birth to you, but you are our daughter in every way that matters." I couldn't adequately convey the significance of her words. For the first time, I felt like I belonged somewhere and that people loved and respected me for who I was, not how I compared to other people. Ultimately, my parents weren't happy with the way our wedding was organized. Only our closest friends and family were invited to the tiny, uncomplicated wedding. My fiancé and I both desired a simple wedding that would highlight and symbolize our relationship and love. However, my parents urged me to alter the specifics in order to accommodate a larger gathering with lavish decor. They contended that since I was their daughter, I ought to get married the way my sister did. Their last-minute suggestions irritated me, so I urged them to focus on me for once. "This is my wedding," I firmly informed them. "We want a small, intimate ceremony with the people who truly care about us. If you can't respect that, then maybe you shouldn't come at all." It was so quiet on the other end of the phone. My sister was clearly struggling to come to terms with the fact that my wedding day will be all about me. Every time we met, she made sure to demoralize me by making crude remarks about what a real wedding ought to be like. With a tone full of phony worry, she would ask, "Are you sure you want to do it this way? People might think you can't afford a proper wedding. It's not too late to let mom and dad help, you know." I was experiencing a mixture of trepidation and excitement as the wedding day drew near. The family conflict was clouding what should have been the happiest day of my life, even though I was excited to marry the love of my life. There was a lot of last-minute planning going on the week before the wedding. We were rushing about to finalize the details, check with vendors, and greet visitors from out of town. My phone was eerily silent the entire time. There were no texts from my sister wishing me luck or calls from my parents asking if I needed assistance. The quiet was a fresh source of worry as well as a relief. My phone eventually buzzed the night before the wedding, while we were sitting in our apartment surrounded by seating maps and wedding favors. My mother sent me a text. "Your father and I will see you tomorrow. Don't forget to wear the necklace your grandmother left you." No congrats. No show of enthusiasm or affection. Just a little reminder that I was already going to wear a family heirloom. That night, I slept with a knot in my gut, wondering what the next day might hold. Would I be accepted for who I am by my family at last? For a single day, might they put aside their criticisms and comparisons and just be pleased for me? Or was I preparing myself for one last heartbreaking letdown? I had no idea that the worst was still to come. I'm at a loss, Reddit. The catastrophe on the wedding day and the events that transpired have caused me to doubt everything. Is it inappropriate of me to want my parents to attend my special day? Are years of neglect causing me to overreact? I want your honest thoughts. Is it time to break off relations with my family, or should I keep fighting for a relationship? I'll provide an update on the wedding day and its aftermath shortly. I would be very grateful for any guidance or assistance. I feel like I'm at a fork in the road and don't know which way to go. First update. I appreciate all of your support on my last post, Reddit. I've attached the update I promised regarding my wedding day and its events. On the morning of my wedding, I felt both anxious and excited. My mom called as I was getting ready. My heart leaped for any encouraging or loving words. Rather, she struck a devastating blow. "Honey, we won't be able to make it to the wedding. Your sister's child is having his birthday party today, and you know how important family is to us." I was taken aback. Instead of attending their daughter's wedding, my parents were picking a kid's birthday celebration. "Don't be selfish, dear, I'm sure you understand. You don't even have children, so these things might not seem important to you," my mother stated in response to my complaint. I felt numb as I hung up. When my future mother-in-law heard, she reassured me right away. "Remember," she continued, "you have a whole room of people here who love you and are excited to celebrate with you today." At that moment I resolved not to allow the absence of my family spoil my day. It was a lovely ceremony. Nothing else mattered until I saw the joy on my fiancé's face as I walked down the aisle. It meant so much to me that my father-in-law substituted for me during the father-daughter dance. Although there was a lot of love and happiness at the reception, my family's absence was always brought to mind by the vacant chairs where they should have been. My family had left me notes and missed calls when I got up the following morning. In fact, my sister had texted, "Hope you had a nice wedding. Sorry we couldn't make it, but the party was a blast." The final straw was that. I dialed them, my voice trembling with determination and rage. I said, "I'm done," to them. "You've shown me where I stand in this family, and I'm done accepting it. From now on, you're no longer part of my life." I hung up and banned their numbers in spite of their protests. It was the most liberating thing I've ever done, but it was also one of the hardest. The next weeks have been difficult. In addition to feelings of relief, there are times of uncertainty and sorrow. The support from my husband and in-laws has been tremendous. In order to overcome years of emotional neglect, I have begun treatment. My marriage and our future together are my main priorities, one that isn't hampered by my family's rejection for the first time. Again, I want to thank Reddit for your support. I was able to defend myself because of it. I'm focusing on getting better and moving on for the time being, but I'll keep you updated if anything noteworthy occurs. Am I mistaken for severing my familial ties? Even though I no longer believe so, I would still value your opinions as I move forward in this new phase of my life. Second update. Reddit, I haven't posted in a month, and my family situation has gotten worse. This is what took place. My parents arrived at our flat without warning a week after I last posted. They demanded to know why I had severed ties with them. I carefully described how their absence at my wedding and years of neglect had caused me much pain. "We've always loved you," my mom insisted. "Everything we did was because we wanted the best for you." It was unbelievable to me. I explained to them how their partiality had damaged my self-worth and how, as a result of their treatment of me, I had spent years believing I was unworthy. It was not warmly received by them. While my mother wept over me breaking her heart, my father accused me of being ungrateful. Fortunately, my in-laws showed up and requested that my parents vacate. "When you're done with this tantrum, you know where to find us?" my mother added as they departed. I was mistaken to believe that would be the end of it. I came across a social media post from my sister a few weeks later. "Finally got my dream bike. Thanks, Mom and Dad," was the caption for a picture of her holding my old motorcycle. I was taken aback. I purchased that bike on my own after graduating from high school. I intended to bring it to my new residence following the wedding, therefore I had left it at my parents' house. My sister confirmed that our parents had given her the bike when I called her. My parents dismissed it when I brought it up, claiming that once I was married, I no longer needed it. My father told me, "Don't be selfish. Your sister needs it more than you do." That was the last straw. I threatened to take legal action if they didn't return the bike right away. They said I couldn't sue my parents, laughing. I answered, "Watch me," and hung up. My husband and I talked it over and ultimately agreed to get legal advice. She verified that we had a case. I owned the motorcycle, which I had paid for myself. We have formally demanded in writing that the motorcycle be returned. We're ready to go to court if that doesn't work. I never imagined that I would have to consider taking my own parents to court, yet here we are. Am I going too far by bringing up attorneys, Reddit? Is it right for me to hold my ground, or should I let the motorcycle go for the sake of peace? As soon as my parents respond, I'll provide an update. I would be grateful for any guidance or assistance. All of this feels unreal, and I'm having a hard time figuring it out. I appreciate your support, everyone. You don't realize how much it matters. Third update. Hello Reddit, I'm back to provide the resolution to this family drama, which has been going on for approximately 3 months. I want to thank each and every one of you for your unwavering support during this challenging road. A lot has transpired. Let us start by discussing the motorcycle's legal status. My parents originally disregarded the formal letter we wrote requesting its back. They appeared to believe that we were threatening to file a lawsuit. My father finally answered the phone when our lawyer called to follow up, but he only did so to deny our accusations and threatened to disown me if we went any further. We made the decision to bring a civil lawsuit. Although it was a difficult choice, we believed that we had to defend our position. It was a weird day when we learned that the lawsuit had been filed. I never thought that my parents and I would be involved in a court case, but here we were. To our astonishment, my parents' attitude drastically altered once they recognized how serious we were. They wanted to talk things out and stay out of court all of a sudden. Their plan to sort things out, though, was to use guilt tripping to get me to dismiss the lawsuit. My father would alternate between being angry and trying to manipulate me by saying things like, "After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us." My mother called and sobbed about how I was destroying the family over a silly bike. I remained steadfast. I clarified that the issue was no longer simply about the motorcycle but also about limits, respect, and realizing that they had no right to give away my belongings. My parents eventually consented to return the motorcycle after realizing they would have to appear in court. Nonetheless, they demanded payment for my sister's gift from them. As long as I regained my property, I was okay with this. It was a stressful day when I went to pick up the motorcycle. Fortunately, my sister wasn't present, but my parents were aloof and unfriendly. My mother tried to guilt me one final time as I was getting ready to depart. "I hope you're happy now," she said. "You've gotten what you wanted, but at what cost?" After giving her a quick glance, I answered, "The cost of my self-respect and the realization that I deserved better treatment from my family." After that, I felt both sad and free as I went out on my bike. I've come to the conclusion that I need to take a total vacation from my family as a result of this event. I haven't made this decision lightly, but I think it's essential for my well-being and mental health. I've been negatively impacted by the years of favoritism toward my sister, the ongoing manipulation of my emotions, and the disdain for my accomplishments and sentiments. I've tried to gain their acceptance for far too long, only to be let down and hurt all the time. I've benefited greatly from my therapist's assistance in processing these emotions. She has taught me that putting my own health first, even if it means separating from toxic family members, is okay. She has also assisted me in identifying the emotional abuse patterns that I have accepted throughout the years. I've formally told my parents that I've decided to sever all contact. I wrote them a letter outlining my justifications and requesting that they honor my request to avoid communication. Their reaction was expected. A mix of fury, guilt-tripping, and attempts to downplay how I felt. However, I was able to ignore it for the first time. I've come to understand that my value is not determined by what they think of me. Naturally, my sister has sided with our parents. I've blocked her on all social media sites to stop her from spreading hateful remarks about ungrateful siblings and the importance of family. The upside is that this experience has strengthened my bonds with my husband and in-laws. They have provided me with constant love and support, making them my rock. In particular, my mother-in-law has been amazing. Whenever I needed a consoling embrace or a sympathetic ear, she was there. With the drama in my family no longer a burden, my husband and I have been concentrating on creating our life together. We've been discussing creating a family, and for the first time, I'm thrilled about the idea without having to worry about constantly being compared to others or living up to unrealistic expectations. I've also been putting a lot of effort into my hobbies and job. Painting has been immensely therapeutic and has helped me rediscover aspects of myself that I had repressed for years. I've always wanted to try painting but never did because my parents didn't think it was a useful skill. We've been hanging out a lot with friends who have grown to be like family. Being around by upbeat, encouraging people has completely changed the way I view the world. In retrospect, I can say that this entire experience has been both transforming and extremely painful. I've learned to prioritize my own well-being, set limits, and advocate for myself. I've come to understand that family is made up of those who love and support you without conditions, not just blood ties. I want to reassure those who may be in similar circumstances, it's acceptable to keep your distance from poisonous family members. Prioritizing your happiness and mental well-being is okay. You should be supported, loved, and respected, and sometimes it means starting your own family. I would want to express my gratitude to this community for all of your help and guidance during this trip. You have no idea how much your encouraging comments have meant to me. They have made me believe in myself and have given me courage in the most trying times. I feel optimistic about the future as I finish this chapter of my life. I'm excited about the life I'm creating, a life full of love, respect, and true happiness. But I'm also sad about the family ties I've lost. Once again, thank you everybody. I'm thankful to know that this community is available in case I ever need assistance, even if I hope I won't have to provide any more updates concerning family drama. Neighbor's shed encroaches on our property, stalling house plans for over a year. How can I finally get it removed after battling him for so long? Original post July 3, 2024. My dad owns a vacant but desirable property in NY, neither of us currently reside there. He is passing the property along to me so I can build a house to live there. The property has been in my family since 1937. It took about $10K for him to get the title cleaned up with a lawyer. Last spring I had a survey done that showed the neighbor's shed encroaches on the property by about 7. Setback is 12, so needs to move around 19 back. The neighbor even said to my surveyor that my dad should just sell him the land. With this encroachment my dad is unable to pass along a clean title to me. And without a clean title I'm not able to secure a home building loan. I was going to work with the neighbor to amicably remove the shed but he swiftly blocked my number and didn't answer his door when I was in town last August. I looked into the town codes and the penalty for the violation is $100 a week. He also does not have a permit for this shed, which is necessary per the town's code of any structure over 120 square feet requiring a permit. Since I didn't live there, I got the city involved. The building inspector told him to remove the shed from our property. Neighbor ignored and refused for about 5 months. Then the building inspector had the city attorney write him a letter in January giving him 60 days to respond. The inspector has not given us a copy of the letter. We've requested it multiple times now, so I'm unsure of what all was said in the letter. I've also requested that the inspector enforce the penalties as well as an injunction to padlock his shed for further use. Those requests were ignored as well. We didn't hear back for about 90 days from the neighbor after the attorney's letter, but he agreed to move the shed. Woohoo, right? He then said we need to get surveyors to pin where he should move his shed so he doesn't have to do it twice. We have 3 different surveys of the property, and there are pins at each corner. I called our surveyor and it would be $700 to mark where he should move the shed. I felt that I shouldn't be responsible for getting his shed into compliance. This is his violation and I've been patiently waiting and delaying an entire year. I don't care if he isn't within the full means of the 12 setback, he just needs it off my property to appease me at this point. Initially I was willing to get the surveyor out again and pay for it, but my concern is that if we do that he's still not going to move it in a timely manner and keep moving the goalposts for us. Neighbor even said it would take 5 months after we pin the property. I don't know why he thinks it will take 5 months to move the shed. I called around and got a quote from shed movers. One said they could do it next week for $575. I've got a lawyer in my back pocket who will be my last-ditch effort. It's expensive. A letter alone will be $1,500, and will take a long time, so I don't love that idea. He said we could do a revocable license for the bit of land, but I'm not giving the neighbor anything at this point. I want to put a driveway and definitely a fence there now too, so I'll need that land. At this point I understand why my neighbor is being a jerk. He wants to get away with whatever he can. But I can't understand why the building inspector is letting him get away with everything. Why no penalties? Why no injunctions? He was very unhappy when I called the town clerk and asked for more information because the inspector doesn't answer mine. He's been so ineffective on this and it's having real repercussions for us. We're renting in an HCOL area that we don't like and would love to have made progress this year to move ASAP. The neighbor should have racked up at least $4,400 in penalties so far, and an additional $2,000 for the 5 months he wants to tack on. I feel like that would invoke actual pressure for him to move it, right? So what is my next step here to get this done ASAP? Is there someone above the inspector with the city that can help me with this? How can I get the town to actually enforce the movement of this shed and its penalties without being such wet noodles about it? Any ideas? Relevant comments. Turk Gonzo, 75. This is brutal. Once this is all settled and your house is done, you're going to have to live next door to that asshole. OOP, IKR. We're budgeting for a very big fence and floodlights. SLP 1965. Does this neighbor have connections with the government? Is it a good old boy kind of place? Seems so fishy. OOP. You're not the first one to ask this exact same question with the same phrasing. I don't believe so. I think the inspector is just ineffective, but who knows? Commenter, it's on your family's property. I'd burn it down. OOP, yeah, trust me. We've thought about that a million times. Editor's note. OOP rehashes the OG post, editing that part out. So yeah, everyone wants me to burn this shed down, bulldoze it, see it on the property line, or just move it myself. This is in a small town in NY. I don't want to cause waves with neighbors and I need the building inspector to not hate me when I build my house. I'm not going to destroy his property, but I'm interested in moving it myself. Is it legal for me to do that since he's been given so many notices and the town has ordered it to be moved? If I give him a notice, is that enough, or do we need to have an attorney write a letter? My concern is that our neighbor seems like he's got money to mess with us and I don't want any repercussions falling on my dad. I'm afraid he'd sue for some kind of damages or trespassing or something. IDK, he's a jerk. Could we be held liable for this even if we give warning? What are my actual options here and how to go about this with the lowest risk of repercussions? Update September 11th, 2024. So a few weeks back I went to Home Depot and we bought a Sawzall. We went to the neighbor's property in the middle of the night and, nah, not really. For all you burn it downers and Sawzall it sayers, my attorney said by no means do anything like that. He said do not touch it, in any way, ever. So thank you to everyone for the solid and rational advice of talking to attorneys and, as frustrating as it is, utilizing our government resources as recounted below. So I escalated this with the town and bothered them to no end. I got all the way up to the town supervisor and he was very frustrated on my behalf. I told him I've been dealing with this situation for a year, that the neighbor has been told to move the shed by the inspector and town attorney, that I've already had 3 surveys of the land to prove the encroachment, and that the property is properly demarcated with pins. He asked why the building inspector was having yet another surveyor go out there and said he would just have someone measure where the shed needs to be moved using the survey. He says he will personally get involved in this and will give the neighbor 1 week to get his shed moved. I get a call back with him later that day with a junior building inspector, taking direction from the senior inspector while he's out of town. On the line and womp womp, he totally changes his tune. He said I have to get a surveyor to go out there to pin the property line again, but specifically next to the shed. They could never answer me why it was my responsibility to pin a specific spot on my property for a shed that shouldn't exist there in the first place, solely for the benefit of the neighbor figuring out how far back to move his shed to get it into compliance. I'm fuming now, and I also figured out that the senior inspector forgot that I had sent him the 3rd survey showing the encroachment in the spring, which should have begun the penalty violations. He also didn't provide that to the neighbor who needed it and had been asking for it. He just thought I didn't provide the survey. Even the junior inspector was embarrassed and frustrated for his lack of help and thoroughness with my case. At this point, I'm still adamant that I don't want to get another surveyor out there. It will just take too long. I talked to a lawyer that would be less expensive than a surveyor and pretty much said this was a slam dunk win that would enforce the removal ASAP. We're still trying to tread lightly though, so we don't piss off my future home's building inspector too much with the threats of using an attorney, but we desperately need results. My dad's an engineer and comes up with an idea that we present to the junior inspector. We'll use the shed as the property line pin to mark the setback for the neighbor. The shed is shown on the survey and we can see where the property line crosses through the shed, so we just need to measure and mark those places IRL. It's stupidly simple and similar to an idea I mentioned months ago about measuring the setback from the shed, but they approved it. I used the survey's CAD files to set up the measurements for where to pin the property line and 6 setback lines. In my last post the setbacks were at 12, but changed at some point that month. Another piece of important information that the building inspector forgot to mention to me. When my dad and husband went out to go mark the shed using line of sight, they met up with the neighbor and he was so unbelievably nice. Mind you, we've all been blocked, ignored, had our no trespassing signs taken down and been told in the past that we should just sell him the property. Now he's making friends with my husband, giving him a tour of his house, talking Scotch, sharing contractor info with him, etc. I'm baffled hearing this and don't trust it but welcome it for the moment. Then my husband tells me the neighbor's wife is rude to him and pissed that we didn't get the additional survey, didn't like that we were doing it this way, etc. The neighbor hushes her and she goes off to pout the rest of the day. My theory is that maybe the wife is the one doing all the blocking and snagging this up. The neighbor apparently had a heart attack earlier this year, so I wonder if she took over his communications. When this first started last year they mentioned that they tried to buy our property so their son could live on it. Apparently it's just her son, his stepson. I think she drove some of this conflict and he may be giving it up or just changing his tune after his heart attack. Ever since then he's been friendly toward us, which I'm relieved about. So after the pinning of the property line and marking the 6 setback, the building inspector approved our work and then gave the neighbor another month to get this scheduled with a mover and finally moved. After about a month and a half I didn't hear from the inspector, so we gave the town a call. It had been moved. We went forward with our final survey to confirm that our land is clear of encroachments. It's cleared, but the neighbor only moved it 3.6 off the property line, short of the 6 setback. WTAF? I got a letter today from the building inspector saying he passed it and the case is officially closed. I absolutely do not care that it's only 3.6 back instead of 6. I'm just glad he's off my land and can now move forward. But seriously? I don't know how this got approved, but I'm in awe of the incompetence of the inspector. I guess I'll just have to see what all I can get away with too. Anyways, that's my shed saga. Thanks for reading. TLDR, I escalated the issue of my neighbor's encroaching shed to the town, finally reaching the supervisor who sympathized with my year-long frustration over the shed encroaching on our property. Despite previous surveys proving the encroachment, the building inspector asked for yet another surveyor to pin the property, which made no sense. After much back and forth, my dad, an engineer, suggested using the shed itself as a marker for the property line. Surprisingly, the junior inspector approved this. When my dad and husband marked the property line, the neighbor, once uncooperative, was suddenly friendly. After some delays, the shed was moved, though only 3.6 feet instead of the required 6 feet. Despite the inspector closing the case, I'm relieved it's off my land and can finally move forward, though baffled by the whole ordeal. I just found out that my wife has been cheating on me with multiple partners for the past 2 years. Original post, August 3, 2024. I'm in shock and I really need some advice right now. Me, 40M, and my wife, 37F, have been married for 10 years, and we recently celebrated our anniversary. We have 2 wonderful kids together. Since the beginning of the year, things have been off between us. She's been acting strangely since the beginning of the year, irritable, avoiding me, and we haven't been intimate much. Some days she's happy, some others fully irritated. Sometimes she's a great mother to our kids. Some other times she wishes they had never been born. Recently, I had to go to the urologist for a urinary tract infection, and the test suggested it might be an STD. This was a huge shock because I've never been with anyone other than my wife since we started dating. Right now, she's away at a so-called business seminar, of which I talked about in a different post. She has been keeping diaries for over a decade, and out of desperation, I read them for the first time ever. It turns out she's been having multiple sexual partners for the past 2 years. In particular, there was one affair that lasted over a year, and it seems part of her irritability was due to her lover moving on to someone else. I also discovered she has a hidden Tinder account too and has been meeting with other men regularly. I am devastated beyond words. I feel lost and unsure of what to do, especially since we have 2 little kids who mean the world to me. I need some advice on how to handle this situation. Should I confront her immediately? Should I consult a lawyer first? How do I even begin to process this betrayal and protect my kids through all of this? Thank you for any guidance you can offer in this incredibly difficult time. Additional information from OOP. Thank you for all the comments. As everyone's suggesting, I'll try to consult discreetly with a lawyer ASAP, gather as much evidence as I can, get the STD treated, and as painful as it is, perform paternity tests on my kids. To be honest, I'm a complete mess right now and cannot think properly. All kinds of thoughts are crossing my mind. Part of me still loves her and wants to forgive her, the other is just full of disgust and hatred, and wishes I've never even met her at all. I wish I could just disappear right now. Comments. Commenter 1. Copies of evidence to lawyer. Go full NC, serve her. Don't drink, work out. Good luck. Commenter 2. Get proof, get a lawyer, do what the lawyer says. Commenter 3. Assuming an open marriage has no appeal to you, take a deep breath and start lifting weights and eating right. These will help you process the emotions in a healthy way instead of drowning in the bottle. Don't say anything to her. Document all evidence. Talk a lawyer first before making any moves. It's probably been happening your entire marriage. Get paternity tests on your kids. Suggest 23andMe as something fun. Plan your next move and execute on it like a divine masculine. Treat the divorce and custody battle like a business negotiation. Keep emotions low. Remember, this is going to be extremely traumatizing to your children. Keep their mental health at the forefront always. Do not talk badly about your wife. If she tries to destroy your relationship with them or lay the blame at your feet, just stay calm. Tell them you love them and this is between her and you, but you both love them very much and it's nothing they did. Don't tell them about your wife's indiscretions until they're old enough to handle it, if ever. Update, September 11th, 2024, 1 month later. Thank you all for your invaluable advice and support. It has been a tremendous help during this difficult time. After my last post, my in-laws kindly offered to look after the kids while my wife was away at her seminar. They remain unaware of the turmoil I've been experiencing. I used this time to go through her diaries and take pictures of their contents. Each entry felt like a stab in the back, leaving me in a state of shock and disbelief. I just don't recognize anymore the person I thought I knew and loved for over a decade. To avoid going into too much detail, the revelations in the diaries would make any movie or TV series I've ever seen pale in comparison. She has been involved with at least 6 different men over the past 2 years. These affairs occurred not only during her so-called seminars but also during short business trips, dinners and other supposed work-related events. Meanwhile, I was at home, taking care of the kids and naively believing I was supporting her career. Some entries vividly describe how great these encounters were for her, all while expressing gratitude towards me for being a devoted husband and father, without a single trace of remorse. This lack of guilt and the extent of her deception make me question her emotional and mental state. While reading through the diaries, I felt an overwhelming sense of despair and was seriously contemplating suicide. In the end, I sought refuge with friends for a few days, as I felt I couldn't be alone, otherwise I'd do something that could never be taken back. They really supported me a lot during this time and helped me get in contact with a therapist. I'm now taking regular therapy sessions once per week. They also help me in getting in touch with lawyers specializing in divorce. I'm also getting treatment for my STD as well. Returning home after picking up the kids from my in-laws was an emotionally devastating experience. I couldn't bring myself to smile at all. At some point, while contemplating all the possible ways I could end my life, my daughter just looked at me and saw my face. Without saying a word, she just came over and wrapped her arms around me. At that moment I broke down, held her tightly and burst into tears in front of her. She's my sweet angel, and the shame of having considered leaving my kids to suffer under their mother's disdain was almost too much to bear. For the first few weeks after finding out, I could barely sleep at all and had to depend on sleeping pills just to get through the nights. My motivation was at an all-time low, affecting both my home life and my work. I forced myself to continue exercising, and found out it was the only thing that actually made me feel better during this time. To whoever said in the previous post that I shouldn't give up on doing exercise, thank you, you may have just saved my life. The stress intensified after my wife returned from her trip. Initially, it took all my energy to hide my disgust at her and the knowledge I had gained about her actions. I've somewhat got used to this now, but it remains emotionally draining. She did notice that something was off, but still appears to believe that I am entirely unaware of what has transpired. Her lack of shame is staggering. Just recently, she asked me to buy her the expensive gift I promised her for our 10-year anniversary, for which I made an excuse to not buy yet, despite her going into another business trip just the day after our anniversary, which was described in extremely painful detail in her diaries. To make matters worse, she was even arranging to meet her latest partner on the day of my birthday. Nowadays I've started to feel a lot better, thanks to exercise and therapy. I had never been to a therapist before in my life, and to be honest, I am regretting not having done it sooner. Despite my wife betraying me in the worst possible way, part of me still thought that maybe all of this was my fault. Maybe if I had done this. If I had put more effort into that. I blamed myself for a lot of things. My therapist helped me see through it that, while I could have done some things differently, in the end, I cannot be held responsible for the actions she chose to take, and no one deserves to be betrayed in the way I was. If I'm at fault for anything, it's for blaming myself for everything, always putting her needs ahead of my own, and trusting her unconditionally without question. While it was extremely hard for me to balance work and looking after the kids alone every time she went on any of these trips, I always let her go after convincing myself that I was doing it for her, to support her business, to let her relieve stress from being at home. That this is what a supportive husband would do. And that if maybe I had a better job or made her happier, she wouldn't feel the need to escape from home. I'd be lying if I said I'm not depressed anymore, but I'm certainly doing much better these days. Nowadays, I feel more rage rather than sadness, and it is the rage that's keeping me going. My therapist advised me to channel this rage into the things I do, which has worked surprisingly well. I talked with 2 law firms about my situation, and was advised to collect more evidence, which I've been devoting myself to for the past few weeks. I've finished digitizing all of her diaries from the past 2 years, which were quite a lot. I got access to her computer and found just way too many photos, chat conversations and documents to help my case. She's been posting all of her adventures into a very distorted private group in Facebook, to which I've also taken plenty of screenshots of. I've compiled a list of all of her sexual partners in the diaries, and have been identifying them one by one on social media, etc. I've gathered everything I could on her current sexual partners, and managed to figure out where they live and/or work. Now I'm debating whether I should confront them or not. The things I've read in these diaries are so bizarre that I thought maybe she was just writing material for some sort of twisted novel, that is, until I found all the other stuff in her computer, etc. Maybe I'm broken myself as well, but a part of me is actually enjoying this process of gathering all these tiny pieces of evidence and information, cross-referencing them with her diaries and finding everything I can about her and her lovers. Part of me wants to see her burn on social media by posting directly everything I've found out, since a big part of her business is centered around social media, but I'm refraining myself from doing so since this would also affect both me and the kids, as well as her parents, who have been nothing but kind to me since we got married. I'm also not sure if I should bring this to light to her parents as well, since this will probably devastate them. I'm planning on confronting her after talking further with the lawyers about how to make sure to gain custody of my kids. The country I live in has a rather unfair tendency of granting custody to the mother, even if she's unfit for it. Setting the terms of the divorce and child support. In any case, thank you all for the advice. A few weeks ago I was in full despair and had no idea what to do nor how to approach the situation. Nowadays, I feel that little by little I'm digging myself out of this hole I've been thrown into. Sorry if I don't respond to all your comments. Right now my full attention is devoted to protecting my kids. Commenter 1. Well, let's hope you talk to your lawyer again soon. I'm not sure why you need more evidence, but you have plenty now. Have her serve in public. Heck, even at a seminar she is supposedly at. Commenter 2. Don't confront. Don't let her know a damn thing until you have all of your ducks in a row. Don't post anything on social media. Don't confront any of her lovers. Just keep doing what you're doing. Let her find out when she's served. Commenter 3. What an absolute piece of shit your wife is. Document and keep gathering information to do everything you can to get full custody of your children. Do it for them. They'll grow up and come to understand that their mother is a mentally ill whore that destroyed their family. Keep going to therapy and see a psychiatrist and get on medication if they deem it needed. You need to keep your nerve and a level head as you go through this. Meanwhile, look up Grey Rock and 180. After years of enduring condescending remarks, I finally told my father's infantilizing friend that I hated him. Original post August 10, 2023. Years ago, my dad met Harold through mutual friends, and they hit it off. I was 18 and in college when I met him, and we never had a close relationship. However, he always seemed to think of himself as a family friend and was extremely infantilizing and condescending towards me. Every time I saw him, I'd try to tell myself it wasn't that bad, only for him to prove me wrong less than a minute later. Harold would disrespect my boundaries, say things like, "You're not 19, you're a baby," while I was talking to other people, and patronize me, my education or my hobbies whenever he had the chance. He always noticed that annoyed me, to which he'd playfully ask if I hated him. I always said no, but only for my father's sake. The final straw came the day Harold interrupted a barbecue to say, "I really like you, even though you're an impolite brat." I was 20 years old. I'd been quiet all day, working on a paper during the barbecue, but replied patiently and politely whenever anyone addressed me. And even if that hadn't been the case, I knew he didn't have the right to talk to me like that. After that, I started making an effort to avoid any events I knew he'd be attending. Yesterday was my father's girlfriend's birthday. They threw a small lunch party at my dad's apartment. I went there with my fiancé and our 6-month-old son. Harold was there. I hadn't seen him in months, but he still talked to me as if I was a dumb child. Never mind that I'm engaged, a mother and 26 years old. I spent the whole party ignoring his helpful advice about me being too young to get married or be a mom. It helped that most of the other guests seemed to disagree with him. My baby spent most of the afternoon sleeping. There's a bassinet in my old room. He woke up hungry, so I went to breastfeed him and excused myself from the party for a while. I got back to jokes and comments, all from Harold, about how I was probably struggling if my son was managing to leech me away for so long. He went on to interrupt a conversation I was having with another of my dad's friends to question pretty much everything about my parenting. He doesn't even have custody of his daughter, by the way. And to make more comments about my age. I decided I couldn't take it anymore after he asked if I'd thought about giving my baby up for adoption. I got my son and told my fiancé we were leaving. We said goodbye to everyone except Harold. When we got to the door, Harold came to ask why we were leaving. I tried to make up an excuse, but he kept trying to make us stay. After a small back and forth, he jokingly asked if I hated him. And this time I said, "Yes, I do. Can we go now?" He didn't say anything and we left. On the way home, my fiancé said he was proud of me. My father called this morning to say the opposite, and we had a small fight, but ultimately decided to drop the subject. I'm sure this isn't over, but if it keeps going, it won't be because of me. This is far from my proudest moment and a small part of me regrets it, but I'm done with that guy. Edit. Jesus Christ superstar, that's a lot of comments. To answer some common questions. I don't think Harold is in love with me. Harold didn't tell me to give up my son. He asked if I'd thought of doing so when I got pregnant. It was still an awful question, especially since he interrupted a conversation I was having with someone else, My dad's girlfriend's pregnant friend, who was asking about my own pregnancy and delivery, to ask it. I don't like making a big deal out of things unless necessary. If I'm uncomfortable, I leave. If I don't like someone, I avoid them. It's usually less stressful. The fight between me and my father ended when I told him about the adoption comment. I don't think he gets that's not the only reason I left, but it was definitely what broke the camel's back. I really don't need my father to stop being friends with Harold. He's a grown man capable of making his own crappy decisions. I never told my dad I hated Harold because I never thought I had to like him in the first place. He's my father's friend, not mine. And I've been distancing myself from Harold since I was 20, meaning I haven't seen him much in the last 6 years. My fiancé was on the other side of the room and wasn't listening to Harold's comments. I filled him in when we got to the car. He's 100% on my side. Update August 18, 2023. Hey guys. I wasn't going to write an update, but I just got some free time and I figured I'd fill you in. I'll start by addressing the very frequent assumption that Harold has feelings for me. I really don't think that's the case. His comments always came out as annoying and condescending, but never sexual. But I will say that your comments scared the shit out of me. And the fact that the general consensus was fuck Harold was weirdly heartwarming. I also want to add that, while I did regret what I said a little bit, I never doubted I'd done the right thing. I think most of my regret came from the fact that my 8 years of keeping the peace were over. It took some time for the relief to sink in. Truth be told, I've been wanting to do this since the barbecue incident, which was when I went from, I don't like that guy to, I can't stand that guy. My father called Harold the day after I made my previous post. When confronted about the adoption comment, he tried to twist it as him being genuinely concerned about me being a mom so soon, and that he didn't think I knew what I was doing. He did apologize to my father. I don't buy any of that. The next day, my dad told me about the call. He said I should forgive Harold for what he thought was an honest misunderstanding. He also told me I should apologize too, since I'd overreacted by telling Harold I hated him for such a small reason. Many of Harold's past comments were made with my father close by. It often happened in the middle of conversations with other people, so he'd be too distracted to register them. He also wouldn't notice them most of the time. My dad doesn't pay enough attention to anything that doesn't either concern or anger him, and he'll most likely forget it until he gets angry at something else later anyway. He's like a meth head goldfish. We also have different definitions of what's offensive, so he'd never think they were a big deal. I told my father I wasn't exaggerating when I said I hated Harold, and that the adoption comment was far from being the only reason. I listed most of the condescending treatment and comments I could remember, including the ones from the party. He didn't remember any of them. I made it very clear that I'd hated Harold for years prior to the party, and that I had nothing to apologize for. I then stated that I'm no longer coming to any events Harold is invited to. My father doesn't need to stop being friends with him, or even stop inviting him to stuff, but he can no longer expect me to show up as well. I will ask him beforehand, and if he lies, I'll leave. My father called me dramatic, but I pointed out that I've been avoiding Harold for 6 years now and no one even noticed, so it clearly wasn't a problem. I've only seen him a handful of times since the barbecue incident, and only twice for more than a few minutes, the lunch party last week and another party back when I was pregnant. It clearly didn't ruin my father's life. I'm not obliged to like his friends any more than he is to like mine. There was some back and forth, but he agreed to my terms. We spoke yesterday about something else, and he mentioned Harold was upset. I ignored that. I'm not going NC with my father. Yes, I'm very well aware he's an asshole, and I came really close to cutting ties with him in the last few years, but I ultimately decided it wouldn't really fix anything. Maintaining my relationship with him has gotten a lot easier since I moved out, as we only see each other a couple times a month. He gets frustrated that I don't call or text much, but doesn't complain about it anymore. I don't see the point in going NC with someone who no longer has any say in how I live my life. I'd rather just take note of what my father did wrong when I was growing up and then make sure to raise my own kid differently. He's on thin ice though, and has been for some time. He's not allowed to babysit, mostly because I don't trust him to spend more than an hour alone with a baby without falling asleep on the couch. I began pushing for him to start doing therapy back when I got pregnant, and he finally got started back in June. His behavior around me and my younger sister, who still lives between our very divorced parents, has improved a lot since, and I've made it clear to him that he won't be allowed near my son if he stops attending. This is the first time in my life my father has improved his behavior. It's hard to be hopeful, but I'm trying. And if I ever do go NC with my father, it won't be because of fucking Harold. So that's it. Overall, I'm glad I don't have to deceive anyone anymore. My relationship with my father is rocky, but I won't dwell on it. My main responsibilities are my son, my fiancé, and my job, and that's not changing anytime soon. And to those who mentioned Jesus Christ Superstar and Blue Oyster Cult in my last post, has anyone told you you're fucking awesome today? Because you are. New update, a shortish. Harold update September 11th, 2024. Hey guys. Wow, I can't believe it's been over a year since I last posted about this. I planned on updating some time ago. These past few months, I've been caught up in raising a toddler, getting married, yay, working like crazy and rewatching Supernatural. Needless to say, I've been busy. Openly avoiding Harold has been working pretty well. My father has been respecting my boundaries. Whenever he invites me and my husband over for lunch or dinner, I ask who else will be there. If Harold's coming, he tells me. He hasn't lied so far, and doesn't usually insist when I tell him I'm not coming. Since my last post, I've only seen Harold once, at my dad's birthday party a few months ago. Yes, I knew he'd be there. My father promised he'd tell him not to talk to me. Also, some of my father's friends' kids, most of whom I used to babysit, would be there. I hadn't seen them in a while, and I love them more than I hate Harold. I ended up spending most of the party with my son and the kids. Harold didn't talk to me at all, so I guess my father was true to his word. My husband and I did catch him staring at us a couple times, but I decided to ignore it. I caught my husband staring back once, and the walking marshmallow I married actually managed to look threatening. I love this man. You know who did talk to me? Harold's girlfriend. Yes, he has one now. She interacted with me twice. First, she came over to coo over my son before making a comment about how he needed a haircut. Ha ha ha, I already hate you. Later, she approached me and said, "You're shy, aren't you?" I said no. She laughed and said, "Yeah, you're shy." She said all that in the same tone one would use to talk to a 6-year-old. I managed to keep my expression schooled. Otherwise, I would have told her I'm not shy. I just chose to spend the whole party with the kids because they were better company than her and her annoying-ass boyfriend. So yeah, based on both my interactions with her, Harold's girlfriend is insufferable. In other words, they're perfect for each other. I don't have much else to add. My father broke up with the woman he was dating last year, long fucking story, and has a new girlfriend. She is not annoying or psychotic, and I actually really like her. They won't last a year. My relationship with my father is still not perfect, by the way, but it has improved. He's actually started apologizing to me a lot more often. I don't know whether it's the therapy or the fact that motherhood has apparently made me terrifying, but I'll take it. And I'll give credit where it's due. He's a very good grandfather. I'm also glad my father is respecting this Harold boundary. I very much don't want this man in my life. Honestly, I'm pretty satisfied right now. My little boy is thriving. Part of me really misses the baby times, but I grow prouder and prouder every day. Getting to know my kid has been fantastic.